Welcome to the Week 3 preview show. Fox on West Virginia Mountaineers Sports previewing the 1-1 West Virginia Mountaineers on the road, the 107th edition of the Backyard Brawl, hosting the 2-0 Pitt Panthers from Acrisure Stadium and the city of Three Rivers, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Living right here in Washington, just to my north, Morgantown just to my south, equidistant, seem like both ways. So yeah, right at the border, I feel like, between the two teams. So ESPN2, 3:30 kickoff Eastern time. The ESPN betting odds, if you care about those betting odds and what happens in Vegas, favor the Mountaineers, the road team, by just 2 points. The over-under at 63.5. This opened at a 5.5 point spread for the Mountaineers this past weekend, like Sunday. And the over-under's gone up just a touch, but the spread has gone down. Now, the ESPN matchup predictor gives West Virginia just a 52.6 favorability percentage to win this game. The matchup history. Let's talk about that before we talk about this 2024 edition of the Backyard Brawl, because I always love to give you the history between the two schools for my videos. Pitt leads the all-time series lead, 62-41-3, dating back to the team's first contest in 1895. If you watched my video from yesterday, in which I talked about why this rivalry matters, I noted to you since the beginning of the modern era for West Virginia, when Don Nealon became the head coach of the program back in 1980, new logo, the Flying WV logo, new Milan Pushkar Stadium, then the team went on to play for a national championship, undefeated season in 93, near to 3 BCS bowl game victories through the middle 2000s, early 2010s. Since 1980, West Virginia has owned the series lead 19-13-2. It was really between 1895 and 1951, so before through two world wars, a Great Depression, and all of that. So before my dad was even born, that's when Pitt really dominated the series, 35-9-1, and built up that sizable advantage. So since then, it's been very, very even. But that still accounts for a time when West Virginia arguably saw its heyday of the Rich Rodriguez into Bill Stewart, Dana Holgerson era. So since the rebirth of the Backyard Brawl just 2 seasons ago, it's been 1-1, even. So this is where, one team's going to take an advantage either way, with just one more matchup next year in Morgantown before there will be another hiatus. But we'll see what happens with that if the rivalry continues instead and West Virginia gets rid of the Alabama series. So going back to the last year's game in Morgantown, you can recall it was a 17-6 victory for the Mountaineers. Really, the complexion of the game changed when quarterback Garrett Green was injured on the first offensive series for West Virginia. Battled it out, feeling each other out for a quarter and a half until the Mountaineer defense smelled blood, with quarterback Phil Jerkovic for Pitt just not capable of really throwing a forward pass to anyone on his team. 3 interceptions on the day, fewer than 100 yards. If it wasn't for running the ball with Rodney Hammond, Pitt couldn't get anything going offensively. Just 2 Ben Saul's field goals, 17-6 victory. West Virginia won a rock fight. 2 years ago was an exciting one at Acrisure Stadium, Thursday before Labor Day. Pitt came out on top 38-31, really a back and forth, hard-fought game. Kicking off the 2022 season when Pitt was 17th in the country, coming off an ACC championship. 6 minutes, 35 seconds, fourth quarter, 4th and inches at the Pitt 48-yard line. Mountaineer fans just abhor those details. But it was when Neil Brown decided to punt the ball on 4th and inches when he had a C.J. Donaldson in his very first game as a collegiate athlete, averaging over 10 yards a carry, and deciding to punt the ball instead of go for it. West Virginia, of course, punts that. Pitt goes on an 8-play, 92-yard drive to tie the game with 3:41 left. You remember West Virginia's next offensive series, second play, Wide open Bryce Ford Wheaton on a curl route into the hands of Pitt's cornerback MJ Devonshire, who returned it 56 yards for a touchdown. West Virginia had one last effort to score to send the game into overtime potentially. 3 minutes to play, 75 yards to go. 4th and 16 at the Pitt 28-yard line. JT Daniels hit wide receiver Reese Smith on a diving post pattern over the middle for a would-be first down, but the David Alvarez-led officiating crew called the play incomplete and ran off the field with no explanation to Neil Brown on the call. So, that's your recent and longer distant history. Here's what's on the line for both teams, I feel like, going into 2024. For West Virginia, this means more, I feel like, for the team's confidence than anything because it sits at the edge of a knife. With 4 ranked opponents, plus a previously ranked Kansas squad awaiting West Virginia over the next 6 weeks with a bye week after Kansas leading up to Oklahoma State, this team cannot afford to go 1-2. I know that there are still prospects of winning, or the goal for this 2024 team. It seems like a lot has changed in just 13, 14 days. But this team cannot realistically, in my mind, go 1-2, and you're thinking that this team is going to be Big 12 title bound. I think it would take a huge change, that like either an influx of different players or something clicking. If West Virginia were to say, like, this is a litmus test game. If you are a pretender or a contender in the mind of West Virginia, you have to win this game. If you can't win this game against Pitt, there's no chance against Oklahoma State. There's no chance against Arizona. I don't even like your chances at the end of the year, on the road against Texas Tech. And I know that they've looked terrible. But given West Virginia's struggles with Texas Tech, like it's just a confidence-building game. Beating Pitt, it always means something. Winning the backyard brawl. We saw how when this team won this game a year ago, it launched into 2 consecutive victories. Texas Tech, TCU, which were huge in the grand landscape of the 2023 season. Should have beat Houston, but revisionist history on that. In 2022, West Virginia unfortunately had the hangover effect from this lost the next week against Kansas, and finished up with a bowl-less 2022 season. So that's what I mean, is that you have to win this game, not only for your pride, I feel like for Neil Brown's job status, Jordan Leslie's job status, that you have to win this game if you're proving to the Big 12, the nation at large, the fan base, that you need to buy into this team. Or the worries of the last 12, 13 days will seem more and more justified. Or even worse. So for Pitt, already, this Pitt team could tie its win total from 2023. And I don't say that to just gloat on Pitt or anything, but in your first 3 weeks, you've already tied your win total from a year ago. You can't see that as anything but positive. And beating 2 Big 12 opponents that you both lost to from a year ago, only going to be more of a confidence booster for that team. Stay undefeated, stack wins in a wide open Atlantic Coast Conference. Before the season ends, I looked at their schedule just before, and the schedule kind of looked wonky a little bit. You do have Clemson, you do have Louisville, teams who are both good in 2023, but BC looks better than advertised or from last year with Bill O'Brien now as the head coach. Syracuse looks a lot better now that they have Kyle McCord at quarterback. So this schedule, coming into again, a lot changes, it seems like, from mid-August to mid-September with the way that teams start to formulate identities and prove what they can do out on the field. So Pitt may have a bit tougher schedule, still with a road contest at SMU. I know they've looked a little shaky, but still new, unfamiliar opponent down in the state of Texas that you have to travel to. So a lot, and then just bragging rights for both teams. To win the backyard brawl, as I said, always means something. So perfect weather for the weather alert. Not going to have any sort of an impact on the game. Might have a little bit of impact for players conditioning, cramping, such and such. But, 85 degrees for a high for the day, going to be absolutely beautiful. Give me that over 45 any day of the week. But I know I like it hot. So what to watch for when Pitt has the ball? We'll talk about the Panthers offense first against the West Virginia defense. The first thing that you're going to notice is this offense looks a whole lot different. I've watched both of their games against Kent State and last week against Cincinnati. It's a whole new look offense for Pitt under first-year offensive coordinator Cade Bell, who was previously the head coach at Western Carolina for 3 years. And it's impressive, looking at Cade Bell, and I looked him up, had no idea who he was. He's only 31 years old. He's just like 4 months older than me. So to have already been a head coach in college football for the last 3 years, and now you're an offensive coordinator at a Power 4 program, impressive. They like to go up-tempo. They like to go no huddle, somewhat similar to what Pitt was running during its best season in 2021 under then offensive coordinator Mark Whipple. I'm not sure what or why there was a philosophy change. I think it was like an ego battle between Whipple and Pat Narduzzi that he decided to leave the Panthers, or because he knew that Jordan Addison didn't know at that point in time him going to USC, but Kenny Pickett going to the NFL, left for Nebraska, and really never heard of Mark Whipple ever since, it seems like. But Frank Cignetti Jr. was just an identity change difference, wanting to go a little bit slower, wanting to go more pro style offense. You saw that in 2022 under Keaton Slovis, and Pitt did okay, but then it all came to a head last year with Phil Dracovic, who was awful, and the offensive system was bad. So just wasn't scoring enough points, and the defense wasn't good enough to beat the opponents that it played. So I actually have to give Pitt here credit that Pitt identified a weakness and made a change. They weren't scared enough to say, all right, Coach Frank, thanks for all that you've done, but we're going to move into a different direction here. We're a 3-9 program that has an, offensive lack of identity offensively. See you later. And it's a parallel, I feel like, to, on the flip side, what West Virginia has done with defensive coordinator Jordan Leslie, wanting to stay with the same style, same, people. There hasn't been a change there, even though that's what's been critical of this West Virginia defense since 2020, when West Virginia had one of the best defenses statistically in the country. Whether it was true or not, there's always context to these numbers. But ever since that, West Virginia's just done okay defensively, done pretty well against comparable opponents. But you can think to Penn State last year, still gave up 48 points to Oklahoma State, still gave up 41 points to Houston, gave up over 50-some to Oklahoma. Just not good against some of these quality opponents. And so far through 2 games, that's what's giving trepidation to a lot of these national Big 12 writers, same with some of the fan bases, even within West Virginia. Seeing a 300-yard effort by Miles Burkett of Albany last week gives you that is why the spot is what it is because there's no faith right now in this West Virginia defense. Now, it was muffled because of technical difficulties. I'm sorry with my recap video against Albany earlier this week, but what I said from that is this is not, and hearing his comments during this weeks of practice, Jordan Leslie's betting on himself, saying there's nothing wrong with the scheme, there's nothing wrong with the play calls, guys just need to do what they're supposed to do. Okay, now you got to prove it. West Virginia did so last year, starting with this game, the Backyard Brawl. Beanie Bishop, Malachi Ruffin really seemed to get their act together. The rest of the secondary, this defense started to gel a little bit more, started to come together, proved it against Texas Tech, proved it against TCU. So that's where I'm going to give Jordan Leslie and this defensive staff and players the benefit of the doubt, because it bounced back at this point in time last year. But to say that I have a lot of confidence right now, it is not true. I felt really good about Garnet Hollis Jr. going into that Penn State game. So far, he's not proved it through 2 games. even against FCS competition. Aiden Garnes, I think that this level, or being in a Mountaineer uniform, P4 level, might be a little bit over his head. So, yeah, no, it's trial by fire. This is college football. Unfortunately, you don't get this kind of, like, that's what the spring is for. That's what fall camp is for. And you now played an FCS opponent, so it's go time. So you have no excuses now. It is all gas, no brakes from here. So this defensive secondary needs to prove it. So let's talk about, so that's kind of the style, coordinator versus coordinator matchup from this, Cade Bell versus Jordan Leslie, and what they're able to do. Now, we'll talk about number 10, redshirt freshman quarterback Eli Holstein, former 4-star Rivals top 150 recruit out of the 2023 class, signed with Alabama, and transferred after the coaching change from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer. So far this season, 50 for 75, a 66.7 completion percentage, very good, for 635 yards, 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. He also has 15 carries for 37 yards, so likes to air it out and has had success with over 300-yard games. Nice start for Eli Holstein. He's a night and day difference of an upgrade from Phil Dracovic, and I feel like he's already on par with what Keaton Slovis brought to Pitt in 2022. So not going out here and saying he's any sort of like a Heisman candidate, but I'm sure that Pitt fans feel so much better about their prospects for this game, given that they have him, even over a guy like Nate Yarnell that you were expecting coming out of spring camp. Like, okay, Nate Yarnell is going to be the starter. But no, it was a late fall camp decision by Pat Narduzzi to go with Holstein, and so far it's paid off. He's got a longer release. It's probably one that the coaches over the next, course of the next couple of years are going to want to work with him on shortening that up. But he's got an arm. He can really throw the ball over the place. The thing about him is he's a risk taker. He has 2 picks already in 2 games, should have more. One he threw like a wounded duck off his back foot, threw up in the air. I can't remember if it was the Kent State game or the Cincinnati game, I'm sorry. But he's a risk taker. So there will be chances for this West Virginia defense to go out there and put up some takeaways. And the other thing I noticed when he runs, he likes to step up in the pocket and take off up the middle, just like Drew Aller does from Penn State. He's not very fast. I don't even know if he's as fast as Aller, but he's a big-bodied guy at 6'4", 225 pounds, so he's going to be a load to bring down. Also, probably their best player offensively, it looks like, through 2 games, number 25, junior running back Desmond Reed. He's a transfer from Western Carolina, where he had close to 1,200 all-purpose yards and 13 touchdowns a year ago. So far at Pitt, 33 carries for 293 yards and a touchdown. Also 9 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown. So he's off to a great start. He's the do-it-all player. When you as a Mountaineer fan are watching him, you're going to say, first thing comes out of your mouth, you can say, he kind of reminds me of Jaheim White. And that's the way he's used. He is used as their all-over playmaker, getting the ball in his hands. He's got good vision. He's got great speed, great agility. Also had a 78-yard punt return for a touchdown for the Panthers this year. They're going to spell Reed during this game with bigger-bodied backs, especially in short yardage and goal line situations, by running backs Derek Davis and Daniel Carter Jr. Now, as for the pass catchers, I really think that West Virginia needs to take care of 3 of them. Number 2, Kenny Johnson, deep threat, 7 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown. Really liked what I saw out of him in that Kent State game. And then your old reliable possession guys. Number 9, Kanata Mumpfield. He's been there for 3. This is his 3rd season. 10 catches for 179 yards and 3 touchdowns on the season. And a big-bodied tight end who's going to be playing in the NFL next year. Number 86, Gavin Bartholomew, 7 catches for 91 yards. Now, here's the kicker about Pitt after what I've seen out of them in 2 games. And this is very uncharacteristic, I feel like, with Pitt. And I'm going to also talk about on the other side of the ball what I feel like is uncharacteristic about this Panthers team. Their offensive line is bad. Really bad. I mean, Kent State was getting all over Holstein in that game. I know Pitt put up 45 points, and it's because of their up-tempo trying to run 85 plays or more, 7 seconds in between plays, something like that. But my goodness, that offensive line really struggled to protect. It really struggled to protect. So, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for this defensive line. I said this. I'm sorry if you weren't able to hear through it on the recap of the Albany game. Now that it sounds as if Eddie Vesterinen, unfortunately, may be done already for the season because of an injury he suffered in that Albany game, I feel like West Virginia should go to a four-man front with Tyron Bradley on one side, with Sean Martin on the other, with Fatorma Mulba and TJ Jackson on the inside. Allow Trey Lathan, Josiah Trotter, and Reed Carrico, who's played great through 2 games, despite the loss to Penn State, to be your 3 linebackers who cover the middle of the field. And I want to see West Virginia rush the A and B gaps, continue to stunt the way that they did against Albany, confuse this defensive line, who they're responsible for, and get after the quarterback. And if he tries to step up into the pocket to run, he's got to, mush. He's got a muddle huddle right there. He's going to be running into his own guys. He's going to be trying to throw over top of them, dink and dunk down to Reed. And then if he is able to get the ball out of his hands, one-on-one tackling. One-on-one tackling is going to be huge by this linebacking crew. Who's going to be covering Reed? Is it Carrico? Is it Trotter? Is it Lathan in different kinds of situations? Or Bartholomew, coming over in mesh drags across the fields. So it'll be very interesting to see. But I want to see pressure. At the end of the day, I feel like that cures everything. It's going to be able to help out this secondary that's still trying to figure out its footing. But that's what I got to see. I got to see who West Virginia can trust, who are its trustworthy guys in the secondary. Yet to see much of anything out of Hollis Jr. and Garnes to say, yeah, I feel good about them like I did in Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin a year ago. But Jacoby Spells played there at the very end of the Albany game. Maybe we see him. And Dantes Fagan, despite some defensive pass interference calls against him, has also looked very physical. Doesn't look afraid, like the moment's too big for him. Unfortunately, I feel like I'm seeing out of Garnes already. So, who's going to step up and make this their breakout game like Beanie Bishop had a year ago is what I want to see. Now let's flip over to the other side of the ball, talk about the Mountaineers' offense against the Pitt defense. Talk about the Pitt defense for a second because we know, about the West Virginia offense. Nothing about Pitt's defense, and this is kind of what my counterpoint, what I was saying about Pitt's offensive line, nothing about Pitt's defense so far has been all that impressive. I know, which is really off-brand for this program. It's still philosophically going to be a blitz-heavy with man-on-man press coverage in the secondary, daring teams to beat Pitt over the top. That just like Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State defense has been for a 10-year period or more, that's how Pat Narduzzi likes to play his defense. So the onus is going to be on Garrett Green to find the men who are open at the right points in time, and also these wide receivers to create separation at the line of scrimmage, get guys off them quickly. I'm looking at you, Justin Robinson, big guy who had a touchdown a week ago at Albany. This is your kind of moment. This is where Bryce Ford Wheaton in 2022, despite the failed reception in the fourth quarter, really ate. Really had some balls thrown up to him, and he was able to make some go route touchdown plays. And that's what it's going to take. So Jaden Bray, redemption. Rodney Gallagher, this is how we get, or how West Virginia gets you involved. Huddy Tuddy, go out there and go over the top on him. Go beat him. Well, I think he's West Virginia's wide receiver 1. I do like safety Donovan McMillan. Liked him, out of high school from nearby Peters Township here by me. Goes to Florida, transfers back to Pitt. I think he was the leading tackler in that game a year ago at Milan Puskar Stadium. And going into the season, this is his money year. This is where he goes out there and, as a senior and goes out and tries to prove it that he could be an NFL draft pick. And also, I do like number 7, Javon McIntyre, being that other guy. like right alongside McMillan on one side, McIntyre on the other. But coming into this season, this is like I thought that the Pitt defense was going to be more of a work in progress, and so far it still has. Pitt's getting new starters at 3 of its 4 defensive line spots, 2 of its 3 linebacking spots, and both cornerbacks. So, like West Virginia, I really don't know what to make of their defense. Kent State, got unlucky with a couple of its turnovers in that game. Still was able to put up 24 points on Kent State, and still through 3.5 quarters, almost a little bit more, Cincinnati was up 27-6. And if it wasn't for one of the biggest choke jobs in Cincinnati football program history, that's a decisive 3-score win that, unfortunately for Cincinnati, Pitt was able to come all the way back and beat you. So I don't know what to make yet of this Pitt defense, and that's why I still trust this West Virginia offense. Had it been if it was as mediocre of a defensive performance that it was a week ago against Albany as it was an offensive performance, I'd feel a whole lot worse about going into this matchup. But given the way that offense rebounded and Garrett Green just looks so polished, looks secure in his abilities, I'm sure that he has a fire lit under him to, have a legacy moment for him in his tenure. Feels almost as if he got cheated out of playing in this matchup a year ago in Morgantown because of that injury. It's nothing against Nico Marchiol, but it's just like Garrett Green needs his backyard brawl moment. He was a part of the program in 2022 when this rivalry came back. Didn't have the shot to be able to take on the Panthers as a redshirt freshman in 2022 with redshirt sophomore with JT Daniels, getting the start over him, and Daniels played okay in that matchup, but I'm sure Green wanted to play in that game. Waited all year, for finally his moment last year, and then, goes down with that foot injury. So this is his moment. This is his big, big day. So that's why I think I'll save it for my 3 keys to victory. But I just think that Garrett is ready to go, and that's going to be one of the differences in this game. We'll talk about the special teams. And also, another thing, I always want to jump to special teams, but C.J. Donaldson has been excellent against the Panthers in 2 matchups. We can remember that contest in 2022 where he had his breakout game, 125 yards and a touchdown. Last year he went over 100 yards and had a touchdown in that game. Did take his helmet off and got flagged, and that's what kind of set up the stage for Garrett Green to do the same thing against Houston, and you know how I feel about that penalty from that Houston game a year ago. Still cuts me deeply. But C.J. Donaldson owns Pitt. I think he'll continue to run well in this game, and I'm glad that Jaheim White didn't suffer any sort of an injury in that Penn State game to his shoulder or wrist, doing fine. So 2-headed back, 2-headed monster to get them involved into the run game. And for White, hold on to the ball. That's all you got to do. Hold on to the ball, don't fumble. So like what West Virginia is going to be able to do there as a unit. Let me hold on one second. My battery is going to die on my computer, so I am going to be right back. I don't want this to die mid-broadcast. Got to come up and get my charger. Thank you, wifey. Oh, man, gotta love it. Gotta love it. Okay, so where were we at? Talking about the West Virginia offense. Now we're going to the special teams unit. And so far, so good by Ollie Straw. Same with Michael Hayes. Don't really have much to report from last week's game against Albany with that. The thing that I didn't like, and I talked about this with the Albany recap that unfortunately you might not have been able to hear, was Traylon Ray. When I talked about the concept and the theme for that video of lack of focus, it seemed like, unfortunately, against an FCS opponent, the play that I can recall back to first was Traylon Ray muffing the kick return on the opening kickoff. And then the next series after West Virginia scored, Michael Hayes kicks the ball out of bounds. 2 things on special teams that you cannot afford in a matchup that's projected to be this close. So, are there any changes to the kick return units? Who gets involved there? Who I want to talk about on special teams for Pitt, his place kicker, Ben Sauls, senior, who's been involved in this matchup now 3 times. Perfect 5 for 5 for field goals. He has 2 now already over 50 yards, another from between 40 and 49. He's money. Left-footed kicker, going to be kicking in the NFL this year. He's got range. He is a weapon. I know kicking at Acrisure Stadium isn't always the easiest thing to do. You see that with a natural grass field. But Ben Sauls makes it look easy. He's got length. He just almost reminds me of like Cameron Dicker from Texas. Remember Dicker, the kicker from Texas, how good he was. So if Pitt's able to get inside 50, you can pretty much already secure it as automatic. Doesn't get frazzled. Cincinnati tried to ice him at the end of the game on that game-winning field goal. Didn't phase him whatsoever. He is a lethal kicker. So if you get him, like I said, within 50 or, inside 55, he's going to be able to bang it. So watch what he's able to do in this matchup. And like I said, on the other side, Ollie Straw, Michael Hayes doing the punting and kicking duties. So my 3 keys to victory, and then I'll get you out on this, doing a quicker than usual preview video. I just feel like I know these teams so well. It's still so early in the season where there's still some things to be understood about both West Virginia and Pitt that we'll not be able to tell until after the game. My 3 keys to victory. Number 1, don't beat yourself. You can say that about West Virginia in 2022, that it beat itself, won by Neil Brown's decision to not go for it on 4th and inches, 2, because of the Bryce Ford Wheaton play, and 3, I'm actually going to go not to the way that game finished, because I thought that was like a really great finish, but the first quarter, if you recall, of that 2022 game, that West Virginia, Pitt too, played just like we saw the first quarter of the Penn State game just a couple of weeks ago. Tight, just way too tight. Felt like the pressure of the moment, the gravity of 70,000 fans, the bringing back of the backyard brawl, that West Virginia just played really tight. It was a battle, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It felt like, the snaps between Zach Frazier and JT Daniels, just like everybody needed to calm down. It almost seemed like the very beginning of a basketball game. Both teams are running, full court, up and down, throwing the ball out of bounds, like you just need to settle. Kick back. Now, that's not an excuse for West Virginia to not want to play fast, want to play aggressive, want to score points. But you get what I'm saying is, you don't need to be afraid. Do not be afraid of the moment. You do not need to be intimidated by your opponent and feel as if that you are overmatched by the player that you're seeing across the line of scrimmage. I feel like there was some of that in that Penn State matchup. That for whatever reason across the offensive line, that West Virginia wasn't necessarily settled. So need to do that. Look polished, look like you've been there before, and you have a senior leader in Garrett Green who you just need to go out there and play your game. Don't turn the ball over, just don't have mistakes, time management mistakes, field management mistakes, how you're using your timeout, just those kinds of little things that West Virginia did so much better than in 2023 compared to 2022. Just don't go out there and beat yourselves. And I think that the name of that game is really turning the ball over. So protect the ball. Take care of what you need to do offensively. Defensively, deja vu from 2023 is what you're really hoping for. I think I've hit on this point enough when talking about Pitt, when Pitt's on the field and when West Virginia's on the field, but you need turnovers. This West Virginia defense needs to create turnovers, needs to create pressure on the quarterback, yes, but as I've talked about ad nauseum through the offseason, I feel like that's what West Virginia needed to see, even an improvement from 22 to 23, now to 24. To go out and do that. And you thought with a finally healthy linebacking core that things would start to figure itself out. And where I'm pissed, and I already tweeted about this, is that West Virginia decided, with its roster management, through the spring that it was good that TJ Jackson was the only defensive line piece that it needed to add by adding Nate Gabriel, by adding Mekhi Byerson, by adding Elijah. I always forget his last name here. That West Virginia was good on its defensive line. You can never have too many defensive linemen. It is the position group that sees the most attrition, wear and tear on the body through a full season. So West Virginia only added there. Zach Keith is now medically retired. We're seeing this all. I wonder why this is funky to me. That there's this many medical retirings off this team. Is this a way of like not having to pay NIL dollars to guys who want to enter the transfer portal? Why that's happening? Or they don't think that they're good enough to eventually make it on the roster, so no Zachariah Keith anymore on this program. And now Eddie Vesterinen unfortunately suffers a season-ending injury. Now, good thing I feel like for 2025, given how many seniors are graduating, Vesterinen was going to be one of them. He hasn't used his red shirt yet, so he'll get a red shirt or medical red shirt to be able to come back for 2025. So that's good for this roster for next year, but doesn't help you right now. So now you're down. Now you're thin already in week 3. When you added Greg Genross, who's yet to touch the field, Ryder Burton, also yet to touch the field, and Justin Robinson. So Justin Robinson better pay off for this team with big dividends. Otherwise, it missed, I feel like, in a roster management opportunity to go get another defensive lineman because West Virginia refuses to go to either a 4-down front or a 3-4 front and get more linebackers that it has onto the field. So, deja vu from 2023, be relentless, be nasty, play within the bounds, the legal limits of the game, as Bill Stewart once finally said, but be physical, just like you were in Morgantown. You're not going to be able to feed off the crowd in the same capacity that you did in front of these, 65,000 fans a year ago, but you got to create your own energy, create your own excitement, be physical, and get some turnovers, please. If Eli Holstein is going to be as much of a gunslinger as he has been for 2 games, make him pay. Finally, make him pay in this contest. Got to be able to do it. And the one-on-one tackling from the linebacking core, I feel like if you get those 3 guys involved, Lathan, Carrico, and Trotter, good things are going to happen. So, deja vu. Then the kicker, and I feel like is going to be the difference in this game, is Garrett Green. Is knowing when to tuck it and knowing when to throw it. Again, I don't think that Pitt has the roster defensively that Penn State has to deploy the same kind of game plan that Penn State did against West Virginia, rushing those 2 ends and Abdul Carter, deny Dennis Sutton, and you have enough within your secondary and guy like Kobe King and Tony Rojas in your linebacking core to just be able to stop anybody who you're trying to go after. So it just completely neutralized West Virginia's offense. But Green has to be smart here because Pitt is still an opportunistic defense. Again, likes to send a lot of blitzes, wants to send a lot of pressure. I feel confident in West Virginia's pass blocking attack and its ability to get through 2 games to get a push up front. C.J. Donaldson being able to have success running the ball. Same with Jaheim White. And Jaheim White really wasn't involved in this game last year. You can recall it was really Jalen Anderson who was spelling C.J. Donaldson for the secondary carries. Also, Justin Johnson was involved in the game. So, first opportunity, first crack for Jaheim White to make his name into this series. He's going to do so. And Green just needing to know when here's where I got to use my arm, getting that short to intermediate passing game that everybody talked about throughout the offseason that needed to develop for Green. That's what it means. If it means that he's not going to run for any more than, say, 30 yards, 40 yards in this game, but he throws for 300, 350, 400, you got to take that. I know that's Garrett Green's nature. You saw that game-breaking moment when it was, I think, 21-14 in the Albany game, or to then make it 28-14, that he just said, all right, screw it. I'm going to take the ball myself. I'm going to run 40 yards, and I'm going to score a touchdown here. Now, that's great. I love that. He did that. He did the same thing I felt like against TCU last year when West Virginia scored its first touchdown, and that ignited West Virginia's offense, especially its confidence to be able to score against the Horned Frogs last year on the road. But he's just got to be smart when he decides to do it. I don't want to see him, getting swarmed up, tackles for loss, putting his body in harm's way for potential injury, because he's still got 4 ranked opponents coming up before Halloween. But I want him to play well. I want him, and obviously I want to see West Virginia win. So it's going to fall on his ability to manage this game, but also have some game breaker moments, because that's what I feel like is the difference. Big time players make big time plays in big time games. So this is his time. This is his time to go do it, because he didn't get his opportunity last year. This is his last chance in the backyard brawl. So, love it. Prediction time. I think I'm going to stick with what I said in the preseason. I'm not going to let these last 14 days spook me that much. I'm going to say West Virginia 38-21. If West Virginia scored 31 points 2 years ago at Acrisure Stadium with a much less effective offense, I think West Virginia can score 7 more points. Also, given that I don't think this Pitt defense is nearly as good as the one that it was 2 years ago. So West Virginia can get there. I don't think that's going to be necessarily a challenge. What I'm concerned with is more so whether Pitt scores somewhere in the ballpark of like 28 instead of 21. Now, I know this is a 2-point spread, so I'm taking it. Absolutely, I would take it. I would still take it if it was 5.5, like it opened at. It could, because it's a rivalry game, could be closer than the scoreboard proves at the end of the day. It's always seems like it hasn't been. I feel like since 2010 that West Virginia was really able to put Pitt away, and that's something that I was also critical of that Albany game. Is that West Virginia, once it got up on Albany there 21-0, it let off the gas, especially defensively, and offensively, just had a punt, and then Jaheim White fumbles, and you're like, what the hell's happening to us? So if West Virginia is able to get up early, then put your foot over their throat and stamp down. Please. Hold this team down. You cannot let, Pitt proved it there, last week against Cincinnati, so I got to give them credit there. Staring a 21-point deficit at the end of the third quarter, and you're able to come all the way back and win it without going into overtime? Damn. Impressive. So if you're West Virginia, Neil Brown has to make this a point, or had to have, all week in practice. That if West Virginia gets up big, that this Pitt team is not going to quit. It's not going to roll over, especially in front of a packed house. Like, this is the one game on the schedule, really, that matters for Pitt. At least going into the season, you would have thought that this game was big circled. So they're going to do everything in their power within the legal limits of the game for them, and what the officials are able to give away for both teams, how they let them play. I wonder how this is officiated. Is it going to be officiated very choppily and very mediocrely like the Penn State game? I hope there's no David Alvarez-led crew on the field. I know he had this game in 2022. So I hope it's more officiated down the middle. And it was down the middle in that Penn State game, but bad on both sides for different reasons. And because it was such a disparate game on the scoreboard, it seemed to continuously favor, it felt bigger in the moments for Penn State. So for West Virginia, get up early, hold them down, don't beat yourselves defensively. Have us thinking it's 2023 again, and Garrett Green, this is your moment. So what are your thoughts? Love to hear how you're feeling about this game. I'm going to be attending this game. I forget the section, 106, I think, on the West Virginia side, near the main entrance, 10-yard line, something like that, kind of in the corner down low. Also going to be, trying to walk around So if you see me, I'm going to be wearing this same jersey. Please say hello. Love to talk to you. If you tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. Love to hear your thoughts going into this game against the Pitt Panthers at Acrisure Stadium. You go into this game, you staying home and watching it on TV. Love to hear your thoughts. And smash that like button. Love to have you as a subscriber. I'll be back on Sunday to recap it, good or bad for you, and we'll have a lot to say, as I always do. Another edition of the Backyard Brawl. So, hail West Virginia. Let's go.